Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brooke Oliveri. I am the manager of the Long Island Health Collaborative. Many thanks to all of our viewers, and thank you to Northport-East Northport Library for having us today. A little bit more about our individual organizations. The New York Coalition for Transportation Safety is a nonprofit statewide organization whose mission is to reduce the number of injuries and fatalities occurring on our roadways through outreach and education, much like this program. And the Long Island Health Collaborative is a collaboration of about 300 plus hospitals, county health departments, and other community-based organizations, all committed to improving the health of Long Islanders. So together, NYCTS and the LIHC, we are Walk Safe Long Island. Before I turn it over to our panelists, I'll introduce them. First up, we have Cynthia Brown, Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. We also have Mark Hoffacker on the panel, Program Director of NYCTS. We'll also hear from Lynn Margaret Brown today, Program Coordinator, Educator, and Social Media and Web Guru at NYCTS. And Liz Lee is responsible for some of the really great local stats about Northport that we'll be sharing with you later in the program. So before I turn it over to our panel, we just have a few questions to ask our audience members. So if you would, please scan this QR code that you see and answer the questions that are listed on the survey, just to get an idea of your the way you feel walking in your neighborhood, what prevents you from walking in your neighborhood, what would make you feel safer. So we appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Cindy.
Okay, first of all, just to give you a little background, one of the reasons that we're doing these presentations all around Long Island is because it has the highest crash rate for pedestrians and bicycles in New York State. And so we wanted to share with you some information that we hope will help you keep yourself safe, but we also wanted to talk to you about your perception of what makes you safe. So we want to educate you about the traffic laws that pertain to pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. And in an effort in doing that, we hope that we'll reduce the number of pedestrian deaths and injuries. We want to give you some of the best practices information that we think will keep pedestrians and bicyclists safe. We'd like to familiarize you with the new electric-powered transportation devices, sometimes referred to as e-mobility or micro-mobility devices that would include e-bikes, scooters, and mopeds, and what impact they might have on pedestrian safety. And then we'd just like to recognize, which I'm sure all of you recognize, is the impact that COVID-19 and its children, shall I say, Delta and Omicron, have had on traffic safety. Next. It's really just a listing of several, just to show you how bad the situation is. I'm not going to read these all, but these are just newspaper listings and descriptions of crashes that occurred between, it's only for a month, December 2nd through January 7th. So you can see that it's like an epidemic, really.
But and Cindy, I think it's also, if you just look at them quickly, it does, besides the numbers aren't good, but you see hit and run. We're seeing a big increase in hit and runs. It talks about trains. You're more likely to be struck when you're near a train station. If you're near a bus station, pedestrian, crashes or injuries go up around train station. There's another one that says driver flees. The thing about SUV, there's a lot more SUVs on the road now. And if we're getting hit, if we're out walking and we're getting hit by an SUV, it's a different type of injury than if you get hit by the sedan. The sedans, you know, a lot of people, you know, it's not, you break your legs, break your knees, but the SUV might hit you in your stomach and cause, you know, organ damage, you know, which
Right.
really
It
might be
strikes
wrong.
you
So,
higher on the torso.
right. I mean, these headlines do tell us, you know, there's a reason for these crashes, and they kind of pop out in these headlines. Thanks.
All right. Well, the best thing and the safest thing, according to the laws that pertain to pedestrian safety, is when you're crossing the street, if you're able to cross at a marked crosswalk or an intersection. Because if you're crossing at an intersection, even if you don't see a crosswalk painted on the street, it would still be the place where the pedestrian has the right of way. New York State is in the process of reviewing the crosswalk law, and I believe they're going to come out with a much more specific law as regards who has the right of way. Right now, I think unless you have your foot actually and you've started into the crosswalk, then the motorist would still have the right of way. But there are localities throughout the state where the cars have to stop for the pedestrian regardless of whether or not they've put their foot in a crosswalk. So if they're still on the curb, they would likely have to stop for the pedestrian. And this includes pedestrians who would be crossing at an unmarked crosswalk. You should always obey the walk, don't walk signs, because many of these walk, don't walks now actually are timed signals. They tell you specifically how much time is left on that signal that you have to cross before it is going to change to don't walk. And if you're an older person or someone with a disability or a child even, you may not be able to cross the street in the amount of time that's left on the countdown signal. So it would be best to wait until the light changes over again and you could start with a fresh green light. You should always walk on the sidewalk if there is one. You should always walk facing traffic if there is no sidewalk. Pedestrians have the right of way when a car is pulling in or out of traffic across a sidewalk. This would be like somebody backing out of a driveway where there's a sidewalk, or or pulling out of a parking lot or something like that. I would tell you that before you risk doing it, it would be best to make eye contact with the driver so that they actually see you. Pedestrians are not allowed on limited access roads. The only time I can imagine a scenario where you might be on an expressway or an interstate is if your vehicle should become disabled. And then it's very dangerous, and that's why they even have the signs up that say, you know, when you see flashing lights or emergency vehicles, you should pull into another lane to try to give the people who are either police officers or troopers or people trying to fix a car to keep them safe, because there are probably been many more police officers killed by speeding vehicles when they were trying to help somebody whose car was disabled. Next. All right, in 2020, the population of Northport, New York was 7,347. And in that year, 3 cyclists were struck and injured by vehicles and 2 pedestrians. And I would just like to note here that last year, there was a young man, I believe he was 13 years old. He was, I don't know what he was doing out at 11:30 at night, but he was on a bicycle, and he was struck and killed on Pulaski Road. I'm not specifically sure where that is, but as we talked a little bit earlier, we know you don't have a lot of bike lanes, and for a child really riding at that time of day or night, they're not visible if they're not, you know, using or wearing. They don't have flashers or good reflective gear on their bicycle. If they aren't wearing clothing that has protective gear. I don't know whether the child was wearing a helmet or not, but in New York State and in Suffolk County, it's up to 18, I believe. But in New York State, it's up to the age of 14. So it's kind of difficult, you know, but not only that, it was a dirt bike that he was riding, and it's completely illegal to ride dirt bikes on the highways or streets in New York State. So, but this just gives you some idea of the age and where your crashes occurred.
And the first two bullets, I would point out, we're going to talk about this when we get to bike laws, but this shows you both of those say that the cyclist is going against traffic, and that's not the way you do it when you're riding your bike in the street. You go with traffic.
Right.
And there's several reasons. One would be the type of crash you're going to have. If you're going against traffic and you have a head-on crash, bicycle in a car, not good. You know, so and you also see in those cases an 11-year-old, a 15-year-old, especially an 11-year-old, probably doesn't have a lot of experience. You know, probably shouldn't even be riding out in the road. Should be on the sidewalk so they don't, you know, run into cars. So it's those two again. They kind of. Not to say we could have expected them, but you know, but somebody, you know, they probably don't know the law. Don't want to say they're breaking the law, but you know, they might have been safer. Hopefully, would have been safer if they were riding their bikes with traffic.
Okay, next.
So we got a few.
Mark, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. We got a few pictures of the library, at least the Northport library, kind of showing where you are in the community. Let's go to the next slide. There's more I can explain. So that library there, I guess you're on Laurel Avenue. These pictures I took last week. There's a few points I could make here, which are good. These are good things for, I think, making it a little safer by that library. One is if you look on the picture on the left, you know, down there to the right, I'm sure you all know that's a school. So therefore, during the day, cars theoretically should be driving slower according to the law. It's a school zone during school hours. So cars shouldn't be going as fast. And then the other thing, which I really liked, and, you know, I may as well, you know, because you see it right here, that Laurel Avenue, Laurel Road, I guess, actually, it's just 2 lanes, you know, cars going, you know, just 2 lanes because somebody along the line, I think very smartly, put a pedestrian island in there. So when you only have, you know, 1 lane to go, like that theoretically could be 3 lanes of traffic. So let's say you had two lanes one way, cars would be cutting each other off, moving in and out. But you've created an island, it's called traffic calming, that calms it down. You can't pass another car in front of you because there's no other lane to go in. The one on the left, you don't really see it, but you know, like further down there, if you're coming towards us, you know, it cuts into the pedestrian island to allow you to make the left turn, I guess, to go in the school. That's great because it allows the traffic to keep moving. So you've got a pedestrian island there, and you have a very nicely marked mid-block crossing. You know, there's no light there, but my hunch is they probably put a crosswalk because the library was there. But it's got nice signage. As Cindy says, New York state law is when cars have to yield to a pedestrian in the crosswalk. So once you put your foot in that crosswalk, the cars are supposed to stop. I bet they're more likely to stop there because the school's nearby and there's really good signage. It shows you what the state law is, but I don't know how often people use that crosswalk there, but you know, there's some nice design features there on Laurel Road. Next.
But I just want to say something about this intersection. It's Janet from the library.
Sure.
And those library patrons of mine that are on this call will notice that that's a crosswalk that's used very often.
Sure.
A lot of people park in the Brosnan School parking lot. We have a shared parking lot with them to access the Northport building. Northport Village actually came in. There used to be a speed bump in the crosswalk, a traffic slowing speed bump on both sides, and the village took it out. And it was actually, I felt safer then than it is now. They did add this pedestrian signage, but people know that the speed bump has been removed, and they take advantage of that. So it looks safe, but you have to be careful crossing here, especially
Yeah,
at night.
speed bump, I don't know why. Sometimes speed bumps are removed, and maybe you would know, I would have no idea, if any emergency vehicles ever use that road.
Right.
And if you see a police car or a fire truck flying down the road and they hit a speed bump.
Right.
So that's one reason.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Overall, that would make it safer if there was a speed bump.
I don't know if you have a picture of the East Northport building as well with the crossing
No, I
there.
didn't take
Okay.
pictures there, I'm sorry.
Because it has a similar arrangement, but the lights flash, which provides an extra level of safety, I feel, for crossing Larkfield Road down in East Northport. But sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's actually good, because the flashing lights are probably the sign. That's a newer intervention, and it's a little bit of a sign to me. I don't quite know, I don't live it, but that you're the village or whoever put that there, the Department of Public Works, is out there doing a little bit at least. Flashing lights are definitely helpful. Yeah.
Gertrude, did you have a question?
No, I have a comment. As far as the Northport Library crosswalk, that one and others, I often feel more confident not by putting my foot into the crosswalk, but looking at the car that's coming to me, and I get a sense of whether that car is going to slow down or not. That is my signal to either cross or not, because sometimes they will not stop.
That's Cindy kind of made that point, but you just really, the best thing you can do, one, you have the right of way, but so what if the car doesn't, stop? So make eye contact, put your foot in there, and make sure you're safe. But to whatever extent in traffic situations, when you're walking or driving, when you make eye contact, if you, get that driver's attention and they see you, there's just something about people's behavior. If they see you, and they might be more, hopefully they're going to stop. It's a very good thing that you're doing. Next.
Lynn?
Okay, so this slide has to do with whether or not you feel safe walking in your neighborhood. I hope you can hear me, my headphones.
Yes.
And as you can see, the woman on the right is walking with traffic, though she is walking with a roller, and she is also walking where there are no sidewalks. But she is supposed to actually be walking against traffic, because walking this way, she can't see the driver and they might not be able to see her. And also coming off of Mark's comment and Gertrude's comment that she can't make eye contact with that driver, so they wouldn't see her there. And then on the right, you can see the group of people who are walking together in a group, which is always much easier to be seen by the driver. And they're using the crosswalk where there is an official stop for pedestrians. So
you're supposed to walk against the traffic, but bike with the traffic.
Exactly. Yes. And it is confusing at first, because you always think you're supposed to follow the traffic, which is what I always thought when I was a kid and I didn't know. But it is much better if you walk, it is the rule that you're supposed to walk against the traffic, because you can make eye contact with the drivers. If anyone else from NYCTS wants to jump in on that.
Because Janet, the picture on the right, our right, you see that yellow thing on the top, that probably, those pedestrians might have the ability to press a button that would make those lights flash, just to give the drivers more information, that there's pedestrians using the crosswalk. And again, that's a fairly new, engineering thing. But we see them on Long Island. It's good. It's very good.
Next.
Okay. So I guess I can ask the group, which one of these images or situations would make you feel safer? On the left, as you can see, there is no sidewalk. On the right, there is. So I would prefer to be walking where there is a sidewalk. I know in Long Island specifically, there aren't a lot of sidewalks in certain areas. So I guess that's something that has to do with infrastructure and as well as the town and the city, you know, who makes those decisions. But I think, you know, it's always safer to walk where there is something specifically made for a pedestrian to walk on. And again,
Next.
if anyone has a comment. Next. Okay.
All right. This is a picture of a common crossing signal, stoplight. And they almost always have instructions on how you're supposed to push the button and when it's supposed to start and what you're supposed to do. I would say that most of them probably do work. New York City does not use this at all. The crosswalk and the crosswalk signal and the actual traffic signal that motorists have to obey are one and the same. In Long Island, they are not, because if the button is not pushed, at least in plenty of locations in Nassau County, you will never get a walk signal. So you just need to know your intersection, and you need to know that, you know, you also get extra time to cross once you push the button. So you want to make sure that you do push the button, that you get the walk icon before you start to cross the street. And the most important thing for you to watch out for is turning vehicles. It's very seldom very seldom that pedestrians are struck by vehicles coming straight on, but it does happen. The most pedestrians struck are usually struck by left-hand turning vehicles. They account for the largest number of pedestrians injured or killed. And you also need to remember that very large vehicles like trucks or buses, if they're close to you, often the driver cannot see you. So it's best, again, to try to signal the driver. You might have read about a crash that occurred in Brooklyn on Monday, where a 15-year-old girl was struck by a school bus, and he was charged with leaving the scene, and he claimed he never saw her at all, and she was in the crosswalk, and she had the signal. So I don't really understand, you know, his argument. So either she was crossing against the light or there was some other infraction that went on. But anyway, it's just important to know that if you are just stepping off a curb and the light is changing and there is a very large truck or a double parked vehicle, oncoming cars really cannot see you. And if you have to walk slower, this is what I said before, you can't get across the street in the amount of time before the light changes, because all streets have different timing on signals, depending on the width of the street and how many lanes it has. So a 4-lane road will give you more time. The light will give you more time to cross than a 2-lane. So, you know, you really do need to know. And if it's a very wide road and there's no place for you to stop in the middle, then that could be especially dangerous for pedestrians. And we just also would like to remind you that, you know, we got people out of their cars because they were drinking too much. Not all of them, but we got a lot of them out. So they, you know, decide to walk. But sometimes drinking and walking is not so hot either, because the person walking really isn't paying attention. Okay, next.
So just to make a few, you know, we've actually covered some of this, but, you know, when we go to traffic safety seminars, there's something called the 3 E's. It's education, enforcement, and engineering. So, you know, we do education. Let's just say a few more words about engineering. And, you know, the roads are changing a little bit because engineers are looking to redesign things, you know, for safety purposes. So let's see, road diets, I kind of mentioned that. You have that on Laurel Road. You know, if it's, like I said, just 2 lanes, one of the biggest problems when you're on Merrick Road and there's 2 lanes, you know, the person, you're in the right lane, the person goes around you, cuts back in front of you. If there's only one lane, you can't do that. So road diets slow things down. A speed bump would be, in a sense, a road diet trying to slow things down. You've got the island there too. Some of the worst roads right now, we work in the boroughs too, Northern Boulevard, like Astoria. Yeah, and they're trying to squeeze in pedestrian refuge islands there. We actually, if you think of Hempstead Turnpike and some of the really wide roads that we have, you do have pedestrian islands there. So that's a good thing. A raised crosswalk, like a speed bump, the texture of them sometimes will slow a car down. Another sort of a road diet, we don't really have the diagram there, these thing called bump outs. Intersections are usually at a right angle, but now in some cases, and we see this on there, bumping outs the sidewalk into the street a little bit. And there's two good, well, maybe even more than two benefits. Is first of all, you're more visible to the cars. It slows down the cars, because you've bumped out, you've taken away a little of the road for cars, you've put pedestrians there, and then the amount of time it takes you to cross the street, because you've kicked out, the sidewalk a little bit, maybe you cut off 2 seconds crossing the street, and that really make a big difference. We talked a little bit about visibility enhancements. Years ago, we were involved in a campaign on Hempstead Turnpike. It was the most dangerous road in New York State. And it's a state road. So when the state came in looking at it, they found, Cindy might know, like 55% of the lights were broken, so.
More than that.
Yeah. So
It was
obviously
worse.
if you're driving at night or walking at night and, it's a busy area, pedestrians and cars, so many lights were out. So just by, increasing, that visibility, helped. And the last one that we show here, there's a lot of engineering changes. That's just questions if you have, but the leading pedestrian interval is a good one. Sometimes if you're driving, you ever see a sign that says, wait for the red lights? What they're doing a lot in the boroughs, and they're doing a little bit on Long Island, is, when you're driving and you're at a red light, you see the other lane gets a red light, you're expecting to get a green. But what they do is they hold the red lights for the cars. Every corner is stopped. And then the pedestrian gets the signal to cross. So they're leading the pedestrians into the crosswalk first. They're letting them get out there. They're more visible. The cars have to wait for us when we're crossing the street. And that makes it safer for us. If you go into Manhattan, there's a lot of leading pedestrian intervals. And sometimes you get anxious when you're driving, but you got to realize that's a change. So we do find that sometimes people, they bump out a street or there's an LPI and people don't understand, what's going on here, But, most of the time, the reason is, for safety, to make things safer. Next. All right, so let's give you a few bike laws. I can't see myself. This is New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law. It's pretty thick. And there's a big section here also for cyclists. So it's not just motorists, but there's a lot of laws related to cycling. We're not going to give them all to you, but you have to obey by the laws that are in New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law. And you have, that you see this sign sometimes, especially in Suffolk County, share the road. Bicyclists have the right to be on the road. They should be obeying the laws just like any road user should be, but they have the rights. A lot of cars don't like it when bikes are on the road, but they have the right to be on there. They're prohibited on the highways, just like pedestrians are. And I would say I've seen, not many, but every now and then in a blue moon, I see a cyclist on the highway. That's pretty dangerous. So the law, we talked about this, you ride with traffic. It's a different type of crash, and drivers are more likely to expect, in the case of cyclists, because you're traffic, they're more likely, to expect the bicycles, going that way. I would say if any of you bike, one thing when we teach kids, I think it's a good concept, this isn't a law, is just to think of a bicycle, they're a lot very enjoyable, healthy and all, but think of it as a vehicle. It's just like your car is a vehicle, your bicycle's a vehicle too. It's obviously not a toy at all. A few more laws is in terms of the helmet law, New York State helmet law, children over the age of 1, under the age of 14 have to wear a helmet. It was Nassau County that changed the law, making it under the age of 18 about 2 years ago. Localities can sometimes make their own laws. While I'm thinking of it, I can tell you a law that they made in Suffolk County, which I think it was maybe 10 or 12 months ago, first county in New York State. They changed the law for drivers. It's called the 3-foot law. You may have read about it. When we're driving and there's a cyclist on the road riding to the right as far as they can, we have to give them at least 3 feet when we're passing them. Now, I don't know how much that law is enforced, but I think it's more of I like the law in the sense of making drivers be courteous, or at least, respect cyclists, right to be, because sometimes, I've probably done it when I'm driving, or, if I'm riding, sometimes you get buzzed, really close and the cars are going fast. It's pretty dangerous. Next. So, just look, bikes are vehicles, just like our cars, we want them running well. Here's a few things, not everything, but a few things. You have to have, by law, a white reflector in the front and a red reflector in the rear. If you think of your car, you have white lights in the front, you have red lights in the back. Those are just reflectors. They have to be on your bike at all times. The third point here, just to relate it, if you're riding in the dark, you have to have a white light in the front, a red light in the back. I can't quote it exactly, but the law says that the light has to project, 200 feet. And I can just tell you, when you drive at night, and if a cyclist does not have at least the reflectors or a light, they can be hard to see. They can be very hard to see. You have reflectors sometimes on the spokes. Those are good reflectors because the wheels are moving. Cars, it's going to bounce a little bit more. Cyclists, on the North Shore, that's where a lot of the bike clubs like to ride, and they love to ride on Sunday mornings. They like the hills. The law says you can only be 2 abreast. But if you ever see a bike club out there riding the LIE service road, they'll just take over the road. But the law is only 2 abreast. And if there's single file, if there's a car passing them. A little known law is the bike, by law, I don't know if anybody's ever got a summons for this, you have to have a bell or a horn. And, that's, think of the car, you're going to honk if somebody walks in your way. But, I think it's just, I make the point of communication, that you got to communicate. If you're riding your bike on the sidewalk and there's a pedestrian there, maybe you say something, or you use the horn or something. It's kind of unclear, but generally we tell people if children under the age of 12 should not be riding out in the street. It's definitely the law in the boroughs. It's a little more unclear, but sidewalks are for pedestrians and young kids on bikes. And adults really should not be riding on sidewalks. I'm a big guy, I can't be riding my bike down the sidewalk, knocking people over on my bicycle, so that's a few of the laws. Next. Okay, so let's talk a little more about helmets, just to make the points. I don't know if you can see my helmet here. We just told you the law, any good cyclist probably wears a helmet. Helmets are very good at reducing brain injuries, so You can have a helmet, but you want to have a helmet that fits you correctly. And there's different types of helmets. This is an adjustable helmet, and I got a big head. So if I'm just, if I can't wear a helmet like this, a lot of kids do. So I adjust my helmet. I make it as big as it possibly can be. Luckily, that makes one like this for me. So when you put a helmet on, if you're riding your bike, it should be one or two fingers from your eyebrows to the bottom of your helmet. Then if you fall, you're protecting the front of your head too. The straps, they got these plastic tabs. They slide up and down. They go right at the bottom of your ears. And then when you put it on, you want to be able to get one finger between the strap and your chin. So then, it's fairly snug. People, probably more so adults, they ride like this. The helmet's not even on. But so it's not that hard. But, well, for children, sometimes I think it's important for, parents to help children adjust. And one thing we find in our work, when we talk to like 10 years old, they have like their first helmet, that they got when they were 5 years old. It's way too small, their heads are growing. So helmets are not that expensive. I mean, they can be, if you want some super duper helmet, but you can get a, $15, $20 helmet that's going to, protect your head, save you from a head injury. And then I guess if it's cracked, I don't think this is here. If you fall, crack your helmet, you should replace it. It's not, and if it's 20 years old, every helmet has a little sticker. If it's still there on the inside, should tell you it's from 2017. That would be okay. But if it's from 2002, I'd get a new helmet. So next.
Can I ask a question? It's Janet from the library.
Sure.
I think in the previous slide, it said that Nassau County requires children up to the age of 18 to wear a helmet, but in Suffolk, it's only up to 14.
Right.
But this says yet New York State. So Nassau went a little bit further and added 4 years to the requirement. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, because they had a series of, I guess I shouldn't call it a series, but they had 2 bicycle fatalities almost back to back about 3 years ago. And they were both boys who were right at the 14-year mark. And I know one did have a helmet. The other problem with a lot of children who do put a helmet on is they don't buckle it, and as Mark said, they've often outgrown it. They may be wearing it because their parent won't let them out of the house unless they take their helmet. Both of these boys were riding by themselves when the crashes occurred. And one was in Levittown and one was in Oceanside. And there was quite a response after it happened. And like anything else, people wanted to do something and make it better. And so the local legislator had several different things that he wanted to see enforced to what he thought would be improving of bicycle safety. And the other items kind of went by the wayside, but the raising of the age at which you must wear a helmet passed. And there are other counties in New York State where also the age for wearing a helmet differs. Rockland County, for one. Mm-hmm. I'm not certain of the other counties, but you have to have the minimum of what the state has. So you couldn't go younger, but you can go older. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
I mean, it would be nice if everyone wore helmets.
Yes.
I agree with you. You'd never see a bicycle club rider without one.
Right. That's what I was just about.
Yeah, the people in the know always wear them, right?
Yeah. When you see those guys out there in those Italian bike, outfits on, they're wearing a helmet. They're wearing the $250 helmets, that are very light and, might even offer a little more protection because they're riding their bikes so fast. The person in the know would wear a helmet. I don't know there's so many bike lanes in Northport, but there is the attempt to make some infrastructure. We'd like to see more of this. We're showing you 2 different types of bike lanes. The picture on the right, our right, you know, that's basically just a shoulder, and they put bike lane, and you know, that's good. And you actually see that a lot, I think, on Long Island, some of those main roads, long strips where you have a bike lane like that. That car is parked illegally. You can't park in a bike lane. That's against the law. See this bike lane on the left, which is probably going close to Stony Brook, somewhere around there. It's on 347. You know, that's a pretty highly trafficked road. And a few years ago, they built a bike lane, but it's called off-road. They took it. It's not, so the bikes are not competing with space with the cars. An off-road or a protected bike lane is a lot better. You know, that could be a little tension when you cross the street at an intersection, but obviously it's a lot safer. People feel a lot more comfortable riding their bikes, you know, in that situation, you know, and that's a pretty nice design. And I used to drive 347 pretty regularly, and it's like, I couldn't believe they put a bike lane there, you know, and it was good. That was a good job. Next, I think we have one more bike slide. And then just when you're riding, just showing you picture a very common thing for people who ride their bikes out in the street. If you ride a lot, this picture on the right would kind of show you, it's called dooring. Well, both pictures show you. If you're riding your bike like that, it's good, he's going with traffic. But if that dark driver doesn't realize, doesn't expect, he just opens his door, you get doored and you could be knocked down and there's cars moving next to you. I'll give you one little hint. This is not the law. If for us, when we're driving, there's something called the Dutch reach. You know, when we stop and we're parking our cars, we tend to be looking straight ahead and we just open our door with our left hands, you know, and, you know, hopefully there's no cyclists there. The Dutch reach, because there's so many cyclists, you know, in the Netherlands, I don't know if it's their law, but this is their practice, or they teach this. Open your car door with your right hands, because when you do that, you're coming across your body. That's, you know, you're probably going to look in your side view mirror or maybe see a pedestrian or a cyclist in your peripheral vision. So that's a nice little tip if you remember it, to do the Dutch reach, and maybe there'd be less dooring. Next.
All right, these are some of what I mentioned earlier, the e-mobility or micro-mobility devices. And there are characteristics that are inherent in all of them. They're motorized. This says low speed, and I wrote this, and I wrote it at low speed. And since I wrote this, they now go up to, many of them, e-bikes can go up to 30 miles an hour, and mopeds, and some of them go up to 40 miles an hour. They're small. They make no noise. You will not hear them coming. One of the biggest problems with them is that New York state law made them legal and they're allowed on the streets, but it does not define what vehicles can ride where a bike lane exists, or where they can ride at all. If there's no bike lane, the only two places they can be are on the street or on the sidewalk, and which throws them into the same group of cars or people or whatever. And if they are riding on a sidewalk at 30 miles an hour and they hit you, that's really dangerous. Now, a lot of locations on Long Island haven't seen a great many of these, although I imagine you have seen this small scooter, but they have grown in the year or two that they've been on the market. They have just grown indiscriminately. And they are now actually, in some locations, you can rent them the way you do what they used to call City Bike. Lindenhurst has a bike rental program. I think there's one in the Hamptons. So they're now also putting these vehicles out there. And I just sort of would like you to be aware of it, even though there may not be something that's prevalent, but they're pushed or promoted as being a great device to ride if you only live, like you said, that you didn't live far from the library and you could sometimes ride your bike. Well, these are perfect for that kind of thing, for people who have to take the Long Island Railroad to work and they live maybe 2 miles away, and they can take one of these, and or they can rent one and just turn it in, and it's, you know, very handy, and they're very easy to get around on, and as I've been told, they are fun. So you know, I think in the future you're probably going to be seeing more of them, so I really just wanted to make you aware of it. Next. Lynn, you want to do this one?
Sure. So we can do a recap of the tips for pedestrians, just to review things that we had gone over here today. So back to the point that I had made earlier, one of the points, always walk on the sidewalk if there is one. When there is no sidewalk, always walk facing the traffic. Be seen, be safe. Make sure that you wear brightly colored clothing. It makes it easier for the drivers to see you. Do not text or talk on your cell phone when you're crossing the street or riding a bicycle, which we all constantly see people doing, maybe guilty of it ourselves, but try to be aware not to do this, especially when you're walking. When walking or bicycling at night, please wear reflective garments and or apply reflective stickers on your person so that you're more visible to the drivers. And also, if you can, carry a flashlight or some other type of light when you walk at night. Some of us, our phones have the lights on them, but it would be great also to just have one with you.
You know, I just wanted to say that the best thing that you could do for yourself, whether you're walking, riding, driving, or whatever, is to be aware of your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are using a cell phone or listening to your cell phone or an iPod or, you know, whatever, you're really probably not paying attention. And that little instance where you're not paying attention could just mean the difference between life and death. People step by, you just have to watch people reading their cell or texting as they're crossing the street. They are oblivious. And unfortunately, often the driver is doing the same thing. And it's just, I don't even know how to explain what a danger it is. When there is a crash report filled out after a motor vehicle accident, it's called an MV-104. There are different instances on there that the police officer or the person, if they're still with us, gets to fill out one. And one of the whole section is what were the contributing factors. You know, it asks the time of day, what the weather was. And when this data is collected, it is in a database that gives you all of this information. And driver inattention is usually number one. Now, I'm not saying it's all from a cell phone, because as I witnessed this morning, a woman eating her cereal as she was sitting at the traffic light, don't ask. Anyway, but that's the kind of things that people do. And I don't know for the life of me why they think that. I guess they got away with it, and so they just continue to do it. But being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the fact that if you are wearing all black and it's raining and you're carrying an umbrella and you have to cross the street, then the onus is on you to cross that busy street. You cannot count on the vehicle to see you, the vehicle driver to see you. Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about, it's Janet, a little bit about when you're a pedestrian in a parking lot of a mall or, you know, a shopping center. I mean, I've heard that a lot of, you know, pedestrian car accidents occur when cars are backing out of parking spaces and they hit pedestrians or they hit other cars. Could you talk a little bit about safety when you're walking to your car in a large parking lot?
Yes, and speaking of being aware, this is really one of the most important places of all to be aware, because many people have come to rely on the backup cameras in the cars. Every car's camera works slightly different. The one that I have in my vehicle is very good for showing quite a distance behind me, but it doesn't show hardly anything going left or right. so that if a person is walking while the driver is backing their car out, they can hardly even see that person. And for some reason, pedestrians seem to think that anybody who's behind a moving vehicle can stop when they decide to just walk past. And interestingly enough, the data of people who are struck in parking lots is not counted in with the other data of other crash data that we get. It's
Okay, I appreciate it.
the federal government includes it, but local and state governments don't count that. And so you don't get a true picture of how many people really are struck in these in the circumstances that you described. But a car that's backing out, the only saving grace is it's probably not backing out at 60 miles an hour. So it's probably only going 10 or 15 miles an hour. But still, if you're struck, there's a good chance that you're going to be injured. I would say just let the car back out if the person can't see you. And otherwise, try to wave to them, let them know you're there. The other suggestion, and this would really be if you are a driver, is that you back into your parking space so that when you pull out, you can see who's in front of you. That's a great safety feature, but it's not always possible to do. There are locations that don't even permit it. So, but that's actually one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to back in. Okay.
Thank you.
So just a little recap on cyclists. You know, the last few bullets there you see, never wear more than one earphone. That's actually a law. We're saying it's a tip, but we didn't. That's also New York State law. You can't have two earbuds, and you got to hear what's going on. You got to have at least one hand on the handlebar. You can't attach yourself to an ice cream truck. I mean, those are other laws. You know, I would say the tip that I would give you for cyclists, you know the laws, but when you're riding your bike, be consistent. You know, if don't speed up and slow down. That confuses drivers. When I drive and I see the guy, you know, wearing the Italian suit, I figure this guy's going to go, or a woman, they're going to go fast. They're going to be an aggressive bike rider. They're probably going to be a good bike rider, you know, with a lot of skills. When I'm near a school and I see some kids riding, I may slow down even more because I've figured, well, they're just learning how to ride their bike. So when you're out there riding your bike, if you're doing that, be consistent when you're riding your bike. Next.
That concludes our panel. Thank you so much to all of our viewers and to Northport Library for hosting us, and of course to all of our panelists for a great presentation. If you would, please scan this QR code with your phone and just answer the brief question, just asking if you learned something today. Your feedback is very important to us, so we really appreciate that. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to send them to either Cynthia Brown, Executive Director at NYCTS, or you can send them to me, Brooke Oliveri, at the Long Island Health Collaborative. And we just have some more resources for you. The Walk Safe Long Island website is where you can find all of our upcoming events and other resources about pedestrian and bike safety. The New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, the Department of Transportation, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the Institute for Traffic Safety and Research is great for crash data if that's something you're interested in learning more about. So once again, thank you for joining us.